How corrupt can a human become? To what extent can they become perverted and, so to speak, demonic? Some extreme scenarios have come to everyone's mind, but put them all aside. There are people who have made evils we cannot even imagine a part of their lives. Normally, these disgraceful people occasionally raise their heads from their dark corners. However, this time the situation is very different. You know, we are talking about a subject that frequently appears in conspiracy theories in some videos. The elites who rule the world. Well, it has been openly revealed that these men wander in perverted darkness that our minds cannot grasp. Even though this is just a single snowflake on the tip of the visible part of the iceberg, even this much has been gnawing at us all for a few days, making us think, my friend, what kind of planet, what kind of period are we living in? If these are humans, what are we? What kind of system is this? Today, together, we will see how the realities of some events that I unfortunately previously described to you as possible conspiracy theories are actually much worse. It is an unpleasant and dark episode, but welcome to find the truth. First of all, I must state that in this video, most of what you see here and there on the internet is a lie, and there will not be those disturbing images that are true. We will examine the real essence of the matter. Therefore, you can watch it comfortably. On a dark New York night in the summer of 2019, a man was found dead in one of Manhattan's most secure prisons, hanging in his cell with broken bones in his neck. The official report called it suicide, but the world did not believe it. This man was Jeffrey Epstein. Once the mysterious Prince of Wall Street, now a figure at the center of the largest sexual abuse scandals in history. Epstein was an ordinary Brooklyn kid, but how did he build an empire surrounded by presidents, princes, billionaires, and Hollywood stars? How did this empire ruin the lives of hundreds of young girls? As the documents surfaced, they also began to reveal how the world has lost its bearings. First of all, let's start with who this man is. Born in New York in 1953, this Jewish boy from a middle-class family, I'm specifically mentioning the Jewish detail, you will understand why in a moment. According to the story told, he was not just an ordinary child. Because he was extremely inclined toward mathematics and physics, he finished school by skipping grades compared to his peers. However, he could not hold on in university and dropped out of school without finishing any of them, even though he changed 2 universities. Whatever happened during these times anyway. Despite not having graduated from university and being a high school graduate on paper, this man was hired at the age of 21 as a physics and mathematics teacher at the Dalton School, one of New York's most elite schools. As I said, the Dalton School is not a normal school. Children of politicians, children of media moguls, children of giants of the business world are always here. It's a perfect place to build a network. And as I said, a teacher without a degree being hired for 2 subjects at once at such a school at the age of 21 is an event that wouldn't happen in history. Here, the school's principal Donald Barr comes into play. He is also the child of a Jewish family, and before there was even an official CIA, his ancestor, the OSS, namely the Strategic Services Unit, he was an agent who served during World War II. His son William Barr is both a former U.S. Attorney General and someone who once served in the CIA. And this person suddenly makes a bright-minded man without even a diploma, a teacher in one of the country's most key schools. What a strange coincidence, isn't it? However, in this video, you will understand that there is not even a sea of coincidence. Oh, by the way, there is also a book written by our innocent-looking school principal. Its name is Space Relations. And do you know what the subject is? Child slavery in a universe ruled by elites. Remember, there is no such thing as coincidence in this life. Epstein, who served at the school for 3 years, quickly begins to establish strong ties with the children's families. And by strengthening his relations with Alan Greenberg, who was then the CEO of the giant finance firm Bear Stearns, he leaves the school and enters the finance world in his firm. His star shines instantly there as well, and he suddenly becomes the top-selling employee, earning serious money. However, in 1981, he leaves the job because it was determined that he made suspicious loans and rule violations. But Epstein had already started working as a strategic brain in the largest financial Ponzi scheme company in America, founded by Stephen Hoffenberg in 1980, about a year before his incidents came to light and he left his job. In statements given years later, Hoffenberg explained that Epstein personally designed the stock manipulation and insurance bond fraud methods used to defraud investors. While Towers Financial defrauded more than 200,000 investors of approximately $450 million, Epstein managed to escape this process without taking any legal responsibility. If you're wondering how this happens, wait a bit and you'll see. According to Hoffenberg, Epstein used the millions of dollars obtained from this fraud as seed capital to establish his own hedge fund and began building his luxury life with this dirty money. And from here on, our story began to get darker and darker. Epstein's becoming a true international man of mystery occurred when he met billionaire Leslie Wexner, the owner of giant brands like Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works, who is also Jewish. This relationship, which began in the late 1980s, resulted in Wexner giving Epstein an unlimited power of attorney over his own massive fortune. Although Wexner's financial advisors warned him, saying, "I smell a rat," about Epstein, Wexner did not take these warnings into account and included Epstein in every aspect of his life. Now, I'm giving these details so you can understand the flow of events. Because in the end, the tip of the thread will lead to a very big place. Anyone with an ounce of sense after the information I just gave will say, "Is this man crazy? Why is he giving control of all his assets to this certified fraudster he just met?" For this, I need to briefly tell you about Wexner. Although Leslie Wexner showed Victoria's Secret as a very high-earning firm as a storefront, in the background, he did many dark deeds with the Southern Air Transport Company, which was one of the CIA's front companies, in 1996. The deeds I mentioned here were operations of transporting large amounts of cocaine for the CIA. Not only that, the man is also the founder of a pro-Israel group called the Mega Group, which includes influential Jewish businessmen and lobbies American senators. The dark power behind the group is allegedly the Mossad, and the basis of the men's lobbying pressure lies in blackmail operations. Now, all of a sudden, did the story of a Jewish youth who earned hundreds of millions of dollars in 10 years, defrauded people, and built a network with the most important names in America start to make sense slowly? And more importantly, is it better understood how this billionaire businessman left control of his entire fortune to this man? Remember, power speaks. Epstein owned one of New York's largest mansions with Wexner's money, bought large plots of land in Ohio, and began using Wexner's jets. However, the darkest dimension of this relationship is Epstein's introducing himself as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. He used this fake title to draw hundreds of young women and underage girls into his own network, manipulating them with the promise of modeling. In this way, Jeffrey Epstein, utilizing a leverage effect involving both the CIA and the Mossad, gained enormous power in a very short time. And after spinning this giant web, he begins to drop his victims into that web like a spider. Most people only started to understand what kind of people those who rule the world are after these documents were leaked. But as I always tell you, this is actually only one aspect of the event. Most of the abnormally wealthy and powerful people we call elites, stretching from the business world to politics, seriously possess perverted beliefs that won't come to your mind or imagination. I'm not saying this to exaggerate, to say they are Satanists or anything. In my opinion, they don't even have anything to do with Satanism. Satanism is a concept of belief with very different foundations. This is a complete hybrid perversion. It includes Baal and Moloch worship. It includes torture because they see all other living beings as lower than themselves. It includes human and animal blood rituals. It includes making children from virgin women and then killing the women who gave birth. And these are all separate parts of different occult perverted rites, but the men combine them all. And notice, it's not surprising that the cogs in this system constantly turn out to be Jews, because these are events based on the perverted customs and beliefs of the land of Canaan before Prophet Abraham. Even the Torah, which sees those outside the Israelites as lower, curses these. Just imagine how perverted they are. For years, many conspiracy theorists, I mean the sensible ones, otherwise there are many far-out types there, exposed or told about these rights of these men piece by piece. But it was always covered up and went away. Because generally, most of us humanize the limit, saying, no way, it can't be this much anymore. But that's not the case. Really, no human side of these has remained. You will see examples in a moment. Mossad agent Epstein, who gained massive power with a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars and support from secret state powers standing behind him, begins to establish a system in which he will satisfy people's perverted impulses and blackmail them later, with data provided by intelligence organizations. And at the center of these perversions are two basic concepts: religion and sex. When I say religion, I say it once more. I'm talking about the religion and strange rites they created themselves. And we are talking about people who have everything. You will say, what more could these men want? The answer is simple: things that are the most basic taboos. Jeffrey Epstein buys the small St. James Island in the Caribbean as the headquarters of his empire of crime to offer these beyond illegal taboos to people. This island, completely isolated from the outside world, would soon be referred to as Pedophile Island by the local people. Photographs and video recordings taken by U.S. Virgin Islands authorities in 2020 and released to the public at the end of 2025 showed us all that life on the island was far beyond an ordinary luxury holiday. This perverted chain, which had been going on for years, begins to burst with an investigation opened in Florida in 2005. Thanks to a mother who applied to the police claiming that her 14-year-old daughter was among the victims of the Epstein sex chain, Police Chief Michael Ryder raids Epstein's house and reveals the hunt in which these young girls were sent to Epstein's house under the name of massage therapy. And both these girls and their friends were included in the system there. By the way, massage and model were keywords used for human trafficking in the documents. That also came out. So, what happens next? Although the FBI and prosecutors identified hundreds of victims, the federal prosecutor of the period, Alexander Acosta, gave this devil only 13 months of prison sentence and tried him with the crime of encouraging prostitution, the lightest charge related to the subject. And the families of the victims weren't even aware of this deal. This is behavior contrary to laws. And naturally, it triggered a massive public anger. Anyway, thanks to this reaction, the New York Federal Prosecutor's Office reopened the case, and Epstein was arrested for child sex trafficking 11 years later, in 2019. Police Chief Michael Ryder, who made the first raid as a reaction to the delayed justice, said in a statement that if the federal government had done its job that day, the lives of hundreds of young girls would not have been ruined over the next 10 years. But unfortunately, the innocents were burned and gone. Is the story over? Of course not. It's essentially starting now. Epstein, who could not save himself this time through his political friends, stated that he would become an informant in prison. And suddenly, what a coincidence again, the cameras of the super secure prison malfunction. Both of the guards who were supposed to check the man every 30 minutes fall asleep at the same time. His cellmate is transferred to another cell for that night, and in the morning they find the man has just hung himself in his cell. What a strange coincidence, isn't it? In fact, the only person in the world who managed to hang himself and break his neck bone in 3 places is Jeffrey Epstein. Dr. Michael Baden, who prepared the official autopsy report, wrote in his report that since Epstein was 66 years old, he accidentally broke his neck while hanging himself. Such things are natural. It's literally an explanation that is an eclipse of reason. But they really closed the file in this way. It's unbelievable. The documents you see everywhere on the internet today are documents that began to leak within the scope of the Epstein transparency list that came into effect after 2025, and we saw the last current wave of this in January. In total so far, 3.5 million pages of documents, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images have been published. Currently, another 2.5 million pages of documents are being kept in an extremely redacted manner. Well, we wonder why they are being hidden, right? But if even these announced in a censored way shook the world to this extent, just imagine what's in those kept ultra secret. In fact, let's trace together what happened. If I listed the people who were closely involved with Epstein here one by one, I would probably have to list them for an hour. But I will go through some key names that we frequently encounter in the archives. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Britain's Prince Andrew, former British Deputy Prime Minister Peter Mandelson, former Slovakia Foreign Minister Miroslav Lajčák, former Norway Prime Minister Thorbjørn Jagland, France President Emmanuel Macron, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Who else is there? It's endless. These are just the political parts of the job. In terms of media, Woody Allen and his wife showed the man how to shoot better videos. Kevin Spacey went to him many times on the man's plane. Oh, by the way, the name of the plane is also Lolita Express. The habitual creep didn't even try to hide it. Lolita is a definition used for girls who have high sexual attractiveness, even though their age is small. Magician David Copperfield, model Naomi Campbell, and dozens more. From media to art, from politics to journalists, hundreds of people were in this man's network in some way. Of course, it wouldn't be right to call every person the man was photographed with a pervert, but as in the examples I just gave, these are people who hung out with this man frequently. In fact, one of the Epstein victims, Johanna Sjoberg, stated in her sworn statement that Epstein said for Bill Clinton, "He likes those young ones. I make arrangements according to him." Disgusting people. And the headquarters of all these abominations is the small St. James Island I just mentioned. The most striking structure on the island is the building with a gold-colored dome on it, known among the people as the Temple. The fake windows and doors on the exterior of the building suggest that the structure was designed to hide what was going on inside. The interior of the building is full of quite unusual details. A huge black grand piano, a large painting in which Epstein stands side by side with a pope. By the way, the world's largest child abuse cases against the Vatican are still ongoing. Let this also be a footnote. And secret elevators alleged to go down to underground rooms. Victims stated that this building was actually used as a rape dungeon, and that systematic torture and abuse took place in soundproof rooms underground. When we look at the statements of the confessors in the documents and lawsuits, we frequently see that Epstein wanted girls to swaddle him like a baby every evening and put him to bed, that they played horror games in a dentist chair and seat, that substances were often used in parties, and then collective sex called orgy was performed, and that the girls participating in these events were 14 to 18 years old. But the confessions are not just these. Victims told that Epstein played the role of a deity himself in that church-like structure, performed fake occult rites with girls, and had sexual intercourse, and that guests frequently participated in such role plays, and their images were taken with secret cameras for later blackmail. The man established a huge facility under the name Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, and because he saw himself as a deity, he built baby production rooms, saying, "My holy lineage must continue." His plan was to impregnate 20 women and raise his own special bee race there. In fact, in the technical plan drawings that came out later, we see that he also wanted to have cryogenic tanks made. To avoid dying when he got old, he planned to freeze himself and his sperm and thaw them in the future for a long life. And again, in these ranches there are hundreds of photos belonging to pervert elites, like Prince Andrew doing monkey business on the ground on all fours, Bill Clinton hanging out with girls in a hot tub, etc. This is a classic intelligence tactic. Find key people in important places, lead them astray with money, substances, and sex, record, and blackmail. It never changes. In fact, in the intelligence world, this is called a honey trap. It is an event that is that common. This is the main backbone in the Jeffrey Epstein case, a honey trap revolving around pedophilia. And this network is a network involving the kidnapping of young children all over the world. However, there are some details in the documents open to the public that I think we need to delve deeper into. Because apart from his own divine sex fantasies, this Epstein also took thousands of pages of notes about everyone he could gather information on, and he probably leaked them to Mossad. And in these notes, there are striking details from all over the world, from the pandemic to what happened in Turkey after the 1999 earthquake. First, I want to start with the pedophilia subject. I'm saying it wrong on purpose. YouTube gets hung up on such words. And the sections related to our country, the 1999 earthquake and child trafficking. In the 1999 earthquake, 5,840 people were declared missing, other than the dead and injured. That is, people whose living or dead bodies could not be found. And of course, there are children among them. The detail that catches our eye in the flight records of Epstein's pilot Larry Vysotsky and in the black notebook where Epstein took his notes is this. Exactly on those dates, we see that Epstein worked with local people in his global child trafficking network and brought suitable children worldwide to his island with his special jet named Lolita Express, and radar and flight data showing that this plane landed in Turkey or nearby regions for refueling or short-term stops exactly during the earthquake has strengthened the theory that these children may have been secretly taken abroad. This is not a vain theory either. In the documents published in 2026, the email correspondences of Epstein's assistants, who saw humanitarian crisis zones in the Middle East and Eastern Europe as a source of supply, entered the file. Unfortunately, organ traffickers do this a lot too. And in the correspondences, the name of Turkey appears not directly as an earthquake operation, but as a potential logistics transfer point. And regarding this issue, when the prosecutor asked Adriana Ross, one of Epstein's child supply assistants, "Did you help bring children from Turkey?" Ross gave the response, "I refused to answer based on the Fifth Amendment," and exercised her right to remain silent. Now, of course, Legally, since these claims are not proven, it seems to remain as a conspiracy theory inevitably. However, the flow of events is so clear that one cannot help but think. Because we saw similar news of missing children after the big 2023 earthquake too. Initially, these subjects were also closed, but I saw in the news recently that after the Epstein documents, work was started in the parliament for the investigation of the subject. I hope they go all the way. Epstein's croaking doesn't change anything. Look, so many documents came out, and they haven't even detained a single elite yet. Unfortunately, this evil system still continues. Let's continue with other revelations in the man's black notebook. When Gaddafi was overthrown in 2011, assets belonging to the Libyan state worth $80 billion were frozen by the United Nations. We see the correspondences of Mossad and the British MI6 implying that Epstein and the blackmail data in his hands should be used. And blackmail and pressure should be applied to people in the United Nations to have these assets unfrozen and transferred to foundations owned by Epstein. Look at the incident. On paper, the man is a nobody, but he has blackmail trumps to apply international pressure to steal Libya's assets for himself. Another striking event in the documents announced in January is Epstein's mail correspondences with former British Minister Peter Mandelson. In the correspondences concentrated between 2008 and 2010, Minister Mandelson leaked secret financial decisions to be taken by Britain and the European Union, for example, the €500 billion rescue package of the Eurozone, all of them to Epstein. Later, when he was caught, he resigned but never cut his bond with Epstein. A strange incident in the documents is also this. Bill Gates catches a venereal disease from Russian escorts at a party on Epstein Island, and Epstein provides the medicine for its treatment under the table. Also, he wrote in his notebook as a blackmail trump that he frequently supplied the focus medicine called Adderall to Bill Gates. Bill Gates denied this, but lo and behold, exactly in the periods when the events were first exposed, his wife divorced Bill Gates. And afterwards, she explained that it affected their marriage, saying he was a disgusting person about Epstein. Is this also a coincidence? You decide that from now on, these events won't end. We are talking about 3.5 million pages of documents. This effect will last for years to come, especially when the remaining even more secret 2.5 million pages are announced. Who knows what will happen? For example, think about it. Until now, we have seen events concentrated on pedophilia and blackmail through sex. What if there is also baby trafficking involved? What if there are much more perverted aspects? Look, these men love symbolic attractions. From the place of worship on his island to naming his plane Lolita, he also named his bank account Baal. Those who watched my Saturn cult video understood the situation immediately. Baal is an idol in the land of Canaan before Prophet Abraham, and the rite performed for him is terrible. The Canaanite people, who left babies to the Baal idol for abundance and fertility, used to burn them in fire. And later, the Jews also continued this rite as burning sheep and rams, and it ended only after passing years. I say, these perverted guys put whatever dark ritual there is regarding the past into their lives in a hybrid state and play godhood in their own way. Do not look for very mysterious esoteric information in all of these either. Seriously, 90% of it is losers doing ego stroking and thinking they are doing occult works in their own way. Wearing ritualistic clothes and performing rites to the devil in their own way and then having sex parties consists of the perverted shows of types who have everything we call taboo to satisfy themselves. Here I also want to give you some warnings, because currently the internet is literally about to turn into an information dump. For example, if you notice, I didn't even go into the Epstein and adrenochrome subject in the video. For those who don't know, this claim is as follows. It is explained as a claim that these elites scare children, making their bodies synthesize the adrenochrome substance, then harvest them, which is by murdering these children and taking their blood, and inject them into themselves to rejuvenate. However, this does not appear in the Epstein files. Putting that aside, there is no need to harvest this adrenochrome, because it is a chemical that can be synthesized very cheaply in a laboratory environment. Also, no rejuvenating or narcotic effect has been detected in medical literature. On the contrary, it is a toxic substance when taken in high doses. For example, another piece of misinformation circulating. There are those who share, Epstein corresponded with Gates, they did a coronavirus simulation, they planned everything. The name of this simulation was Event 201, and it was not secret. On the contrary, the simulation was done publicly and by being advertised. And hypothetically, a report was presented on how a disease that would spread from pigs in Brazil would lock down the health system. Adding unnecessary mystery to this is nothing but creating information pollution. The subject of those with purple eyes, the subject of those who practice cannibalism, etc., these expressions are not in these documents so far. But the absence of these doesn't mean, well, okay, all of it is a lie. One shouldn't mix apples and oranges. The Epstein file is just what they show us of a cog in this giant wheel. Whereas what more events are turning in the whole machine that we don't even know about? Now, the complotists who serve everything to people without researching. Unfortunately, they read in the files that Epstein was interested in parabiosis experiments, which these experiments are basically a method of processing a young person's blood, and are fringe theoretical experiments aiming to rejuvenate an elderly person by giving it to them. And they take this, immediately combine it with a few occult rites, shoot its video, and present it to you. Well, the man is already someone who has lost his mind with God obsession and transhumanism. Of course he can research these subjects, but ultimately the subject cannot be done scientifically at the moment. In fact, let me give you even more information. Epstein met with names conducting genetic aging research such as George Church at Harvard, just because of this obsession with immortality. In their conversations, they touched upon techniques similar to parabiosis in CRISPR and anti-aging studies with Church. Epstein made a $6.5 million donation to Harvard and participated in meetings about the subject even in 2014. In fact, the man collected $200 million for experiment analyses with the Southern Trust Company in the Virgin Islands just to provide data to these experiments. Seriously, someone who has lost his mind with immortality. But if you hold this data and tell it as the man was drinking baby blood, your video will be clicked, of course, but you will have given unsupported information to people. I have scanned the data leaked so far with their artificial intelligences as much as I could. However, I could not find leaked information like occult rites, blood transfusion from babies and children, which appear in most conspiracy claims. Would I be surprised if it comes out? No, I wouldn't be surprised. Because be sure, there are certainly perverted types in this world who do these. But the Epstein case is an international pedophilia, human trafficking, sex and bribery system established for blackmailing elite and key men with CIA and Mossad support as far as I see. Since there is every kind of perversion in the types who rule the world, in the Epstein branch we see the leaks on its pedophilia sex pillar. Who knows, there might be much more different things in another pawn like him. I say, filth doesn't end in this world. You just don't believe every video you watch these days immediately. Because besides images made with AI around, there are also images taken from old unrelated cases or montaged. People are already tense. Types saying, "Let me look to my own way by taking advantage of this opportunity," have unfortunately come out as always. I tried to tell the event with its main backbone and official data as much as I could, which even in this state, it is already sufficiently nauseating and disgusting. That is, it doesn't necessarily have to have occult mysteries in it. Even this is a small example of what a perverted world we live in. If we entered into side branches, oh boy, 10 different video subjects would come out. But thanks to them, there are also people making beautiful publications in our country too, and some of them lean toward the political side of the job. Some lean toward the bribery side, and are giving beautiful information. Watch them too. But remember, there are 3.5 million documents in the middle. Who knows what more will come out? Just watch in a common sense way by doing cross-interrogation and research, because a very large part of the videos circulating around are completely fake. When someone said I will make this video, they said, "Brother, essentially what will happen after this, under my post?" Let me answer that too, before closing. It has emerged that the man was an agent, and we know he was an Israeli agent too. So, what is the agenda now? The hitting of Iran. So, why was it not hit? Because the US is not very eager. Well, why are these documents coming onto the market right now in a way to squeeze Trump? Or is Mossad saying, "Come on, finish this job already, or I'll finish you"? Or will Trump throw a missile at Iran soon to change the agenda and make the Epstein case forgotten, saying, "Oh, let's not let the taste go deeper. Let our taste not be ruined, Ali Raza Bey." Throughout the video, you saw how these networks catch people off guard. Now, according to this, is the scenario I just mentioned very far away for you? Mossad is a truly dangerous organization, and this evil mentality already caught many key names in its network with these trap spiderwebs it established decades ago. Now, the only thing remaining is to play the puppets whose strings they hold as they wish. Briefly, I wouldn't be surprised if the agenda changes with a big war soon. Really, when one sees these, one both feels small and says, let there be no such world. But do not be hopeless. Yes, truly horribly perverted people rule this system, but they are not immortal. They will croak and go one day for sure. Humanity will change and come to its senses one day for sure. And then maybe our children will see more beautiful tomorrows. I hope for this. You live with this hope too. You also don't get stuck in this dark face of humanity. There are also people striving for goodness outside, and one day the scale will weigh heavier on their side, for sure. See you in the next video.